Right now, if you're following global markets, you're seeing the most massive shift in international trade influence and security since the Berlin Wall came down. You're witnessing the core structure of the world economy getting torn apart and reconstructed right before your eyes. Throughout your lifetime, the entire global trading framework has orbited one single, unchallenged focal point. That point was the United States of America. But today, that world map has been completely redrawn, and the United States has been precisely and deliberately removed from its central position. Through a carefully synchronized, utterly crushing combination of diplomatic and economic maneuvers, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has just revealed the creation of an expansive new 40-nation plurilateral alliance. More than 40 countries, covering the European Union, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and major rising economies across the global south, have formally committed to merging their supply chains, pooling critical minerals, and aligning their defense production systems. This wasn't merely a trade agreement. They constructed a stronghold and deliberately kept Donald Trump shut out. Over the next few minutes, I'll guide you step by step through precisely how this unprecedented historic erosion of American power unfolded. I'll detail the specific actions Mark Carney took behind the scenes at Davos to outplay the White House entirely. I'll break down the billions of dollars pouring out of the U.S. economy even as we speak. And above all, I'll explain exactly how Donald Trump's fixation on his own ego is poised to drive up the cost of your daily life, your food, and your long-term prospects dramatically. You're seeing history in motion, and it's happening because one man believed he could intimidate the entire planet, while another man chose to demonstrate he was wrong. To grasp the truly alarming scale of this moment, you need to examine the precise sequence of developments that led to this morning. Only days earlier, President Donald Trump believed he held unbeatable leverage. He examined the tightly interwoven North American economy and chose to weaponize it. He went onto his social media accounts and warned of a totally ruinous 100% tariff on every Canadian import. He didn't merely target Canada's economy, he made a point of attacking its core independence. He openly called Prime Minister Mark Carney a governor. He strongly suggested Canada amounted to little more than the 51st state, a dependent, feeble region that survived only thanks to U.S. generosity. He warned that any Canadian attempt to strike independent economic deals with China or others would be crushed. He assumed he could strong-arm a G7 partner the same way he pressures a small contractor in a property transaction. He insisted on total, unquestioned obedience. But Mark Carney isn't a reality TV personality. He doesn't lead through instinct or lose composure when a bully yells. He's a widely admired, extensively networked ex-central banker. He grasps the complex, concealed mechanics of the worldwide financial network more clearly than anyone in the current Trump team. Carney avoided TV rants or hurling insults. He didn't fire off furious late-night messages. He simply gathered his materials, traveled to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and methodically took apart the American empire in plain view of everyone. You must understand precisely what transpired in that Davos room. Events that will fill history books for the next century. Mark Carney stepped onto the international platform and gave a speech that rocked financial centers everywhere. He skipped the standard political rhetoric. Instead, he delivered a farewell to the previous global order. Carney faced the world's elite and stated that the post-Cold War period of American dominance had suffered a break, not a smooth handover. He directly challenged the double standard of major powers like the United States weaponizing economic ties, deploying tariffs for pressure, and exploiting global supply networks as weaknesses. Then he employed a metaphor that shattered the illusion Donald Trump had imposed on the world economy. He alluded to a well-known essay about a modest greengrocer under an oppressive system. Each day, the greengrocer displays a regime slogan in his shop window, not from conviction, but to dodge trouble from those in power. Carney addressed the cameras and said that for years, middle powers like Canada had displayed that sign. They had gone along with the pretense that the United States was a dependable, rules-based ally. Then, with the globe watching, Carney declared Canada was removing the sign. He stated that Canada and its coalition of middle powers would no longer yield to the erratic demands of a declining superpower. He proclaimed that middle powers possess the ability to quit pretending, face facts, and grow stronger through collective action. Donald Trump sought capitulation. Mark Carney delivered a revolt. And this went beyond words. It marked the start of a tightly orchestrated, punishing economic counterstrike. Let's examine the overwhelming evidence now flooding in, because the redirection of capital is enormous and deliberately crafted to sidestep the United States. The first huge piece of evidence is the dramatic overhaul of worldwide defense expenditures. For generations, the U.S. defense sector has completely ruled the planet. If nations wanted cutting-edge jets, radar tech, or weapon systems, they purchased American. Carney overturned that dominance. He unveiled a $180 billion Canadian defense industry plan. But the deadly element is Canada's formal entry into the European Union's secure defense purchasing framework. That means this 40-nation group is now mutually approving their defense firms. A European aircraft company, a Canadian drone producer, and an Australian robotics outfit can compete for one another's enormous military deals without barriers, fully excluding classic U.S. giants like Lockheed Martin and Boeing. They're establishing a sealed defense supply network. America's military-industrial empire lost its exclusive position in a single day, all because Trump kept treating nearest partners like adversaries. The second piece of evidence is the iron grip on tomorrow's technology. Today's world depends on critical minerals. Lithium, cobalt, and rare earths power EVs, phones, and the whole AI boom. Led by Carney, this 40-nation group has created an exclusive purchasing bloc rooted in the G7. They're combining efforts to lock down worldwide supplies of these resources, essentially erecting a giant barrier around their advanced manufacturing. If Silicon Valley firms want minerals extracted in Canada or Australia, they'll now wait at the end of the queue, paying steep surcharges, while the 40-nation group distributes them tariff-free. Trump believed steel tariffs could hold everyone captive. Carney seized the foundational elements of the current century instead. The third piece of evidence is the harsh internal shift. Following Trump's 100% tariff warning, Carney didn't merely look abroad, he turned inward. He swiftly rolled out a forceful Buy Canadian, Build Canadian policy. This represents a complete structural break from depending on U.S. providers. Carney required that billions in housing, infrastructure, and public projects use only Canadian steel, aluminum, lumber, and labor. For U.S. plants in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan that depend on shipping those very goods northward, this spells disaster. Contracts are vanishing right now. Work hours are shrinking. Trump vowed to revive manufacturing, but his careless words just obliterated the biggest export destination American workers ever knew. The fourth piece of evidence is the quiet exodus of capital taking place privately. While Trump raged online, Mark Carney sat calmly in Swiss meeting rooms with business heads controlling over $10 trillion in market value. $10 trillion. Carney met their gaze and provided what Trump cannot: genuine predictability. He emphasized Canada's AAA credit standing, its G7 lowest net debt to GDP level, and a banking sector that remains stable. The funds are shifting. Live updates show huge foreign investments diverting from U.S. uncertainty straight into Canadian energy, quantum tech, and medical innovation. Sophisticated investors recognize that a nation run by late-night outbursts isn't a secure spot for massive capital. The fifth piece of evidence is the complete breakdown of U.S. diplomatic clout. In recent weeks, while Washington has been crippled by internal battles and trade conflicts, Canada has aggressively spread its partnerships. They finalized a fresh deal with China, opening $7 billion in export opportunities. They inked a major new pact with Qatar, expanding trade and security links. They're forging connections between the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European Union, forming a gigantic trade zone of 1.5 billion people. Whenever Trump erects a barrier, Carney constructs a bridge across it, linking the rest of the planet while leaving the United States isolated. This is what genuine, highly skilled leadership looks like under pressure. Consider the painful difference between these two figures. In Washington stands a president reportedly yelling at staff, tossing documents, and scrambling to compel global respect. He's purely reactive. He ramps up with reckless warnings, betting American scale will eventually compel submission. He rules via disorder, intimidation, and profound insecurity. In Ottawa stands a prime minister who never raises his tone. He works with the sharp, deadly accuracy of data analysis. He refuses to engage Trump on Trump's battlefield. He simply rewrites the global economic equations until Trump's threats lose all practical meaning. Carney acts not from rage, but from a deep, realistic duty to shield his country from an erratic neighbor. Yet you must realize how this grand strategic contest will slam into your ordinary existence, because you'll foot the price for Trump's disastrous pride. As this 40-nation group constructs its separate supply networks, the time of low-cost, seamless worldwide commerce has ended. We're heading into an age of harsh economic division, and division carries enormous costs. When U.S. firms find themselves excluded from fresh global purchasing systems, when they rush to locate replacement sources for car components, electronics, and basic materials, because traditional Canadian channels are sealed by counter tariffs and new coalitions, production expenses will surge. Corporations won't swallow those increases. They'll transfer every cent straight to consumers. Picture visiting an auto showroom next month. The tightly linked North American vehicle supply network, where pieces cross borders multiple times before assembly, is being dismantled. Car makers can't produce without those components. Expect sparse inventory. Expect huge price hikes. An ordinary pickup could cost thousands more overnight, all because Donald Trump chose to act tough at the Canadian frontier. Picture your next grocery trip. Agricultural import prices, packaging costs, transportation fuel expenses. Everything will climb as the U.S. dollar forfeits its unchallenged status and inflation surges. Trump's tariffs function as a giant concealed tax hike on middle-class Americans. It's a financial load dumped entirely on you to fund a misguided political tactic. And consider your retirement savings. If you hold a 401k, it's deeply tied to the U.S. stock market. That market assumes continued worldwide expansion and market reach. If 40 of the richest, most sophisticated countries build a parallel economic system excluding Wall Street, future growth forecasts for American firms will collapse. Tech leaders, factories, shipping businesses, they'll all suffer severe losses. You'll see your nest egg shrink because the U.S. president couldn't quit performing diplomacy like a wrestling routine. So what's coming? We're stepping into the riskiest, least predictable stage of this breakdown. The old order lies broken, and 3 alarming possibilities are unfolding privately. Scenario A, complete economic capitulation. The overwhelming pressure from Carney's 40-nation bloc drives the U.S. stock market into collapse. The Dow plunges thousands of points as isolation becomes undeniable. Heads of major U.S. companies storm the Oval Office, warning Trump that without tariff removal and an apology, depression hits immediately. Trump faces forced, embarrassing retreat. He cancels the tariffs, but America's trustworthiness suffers lasting harm. The world now knows he can lose. Scenario B, authoritarian intensification. Trump's pride rejects surrender to someone he labeled governor. Rather than retreat, he escalates. He proclaims a broad national emergency. He tries freezing Canadian holdings in America. He fully militarizes the northern border, halting trade to choke Canada. But this sparks an instant, devastating worldwide downturn. The 40-nation group formally sanctions America. The U.S. turns into a global outcast caught in self-inflicted inflationary collapse. Scenario C, establishment revolt. Terrified by the abrupt ruin of global defense links and intelligence networks, America's political and military leaders quietly work to curb presidential power. Congress pushes veto-resistant laws stripping Trump's emergency tariff authority. The Republican Party splits violently, loyalists eager to destroy everything for Trump's pride versus realists desperate to rescue the economy. America slides into a crippling constitutional standoff while the world advances without it. Whichever path unfolds, one undeniable fact stands. The American era has ended. It didn't close with cataclysmic war or foreign conquest. It closed because a courteous, brilliant Canadian Prime Minister gazed at a brash, disorderly American president and quietly answered no. Mark Carney demonstrated the planet can operate without the United States. He showed that steadiness, intellect, and reciprocal regard outweigh bluster and hollow tariffs. He launched a rescue vessel for the world economy and is steering it clear of the foundering American project. As prices climb, factories idle, and nations turn from Washington, ask yourself a tough question. Is this the greatness you expected? You're experiencing a pivotal shift in world history. The map has changed, and you're on the isolated side. We'll continue covering this fast unraveling crisis moment by moment. We're monitoring currency fluctuations, supply networks, and the desperate reactions from the White House. Mainstream outlets hesitate to reveal how thoroughly the United States just lost. But we'll deliver the plain, uncensored reality. Hit subscribe immediately. Enable notifications. You can't risk missing what's next. The financial consequences of this 40-nation block will reach your wallet sooner than you think. Share your views in the comments. Did Mark Carney rescue the world economy or ignite the last great trade conflict? Do you fault Canada for self-defense or Donald Trump for alienating our nearest partners? I read every reply and want to hear your position. Remain alert, stay updated. The world you recognized has vanished.